Free speech is meaningless unless it tolerates the speech that we hate. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is the online safety bill, which was tabled in Parliament yesterday. To discuss all this and more, we've invited four guests to our studio this evening as well. Joining us this evening on the show are Attorney at Law, President's Counsel Farman Qasim, Attorney at Law Nuwan Bopage, Attorney at Law J. Vijay Bandara, as well as Shihar Raniz, Executive Director for Centre for Investigative Reporting. You too can join in as far as the conversation is concerned. You can send in your messages via WhatsApp. The number is 076 656 5353. The number once again 076 656 5353. To pose questions from the panelists this evening, I have with me on to my immediate left Hiresh Eliathambi, Consultant English News Director at Newsfirst. So let's get the ball rolling today with Attorney at Law and President's Counsel, Mr. Farman Qasim, on the online safety bill. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on the show and good evening. Online security bill, I think position of many people and the populace is that there has to be an online security bill, no doubt about it. But the question that we have to ask ourselves and answer is, for what purpose is an online security bill necessary? If you just look around, I think the most vulnerable segment of society of the online crimes and the safe spaces that are not available are the children and females. If you look at, if we do a proper research, so what we need to address is the child abuse that goes on online, as well as the various pictures and the various harassment that the female population has to go through because of lack of online laws, online security laws. And that is the most important segment of our society. That's our children and the female population, I think, is the most important segment of society in our country or anywhere in the world for that matter, and they have to be protected. So then, looking at it from that context, does this bill attempt to look after that segment of people, or does it attempt to do something else that is totally unnecessary? For example, an online security bill would have initially, if we really thought out, would have initially brought in only for the segments of society for women and children specifically. So then you can stop that abuse there first, because the other areas from section 12 to 24 in the bill gives various offences that can be dealt with the normal laws of the country, and basically most of them are civil actions for defamation or for various things. So when you ask me the question what my initial thoughts are, I think those are my initial thoughts, and that's our party stance also. Because an online security bill, I think we should first look after the children. I mean, that is what you need to go immediately to court within an hour or two. Or to be very frank, if we talk about nude pictures, it's mostly the females who are the women populace that is suffering from this kind of harassment. So this bill does not encompass that, and this bill has brought in for some extraneous purpose to stifle dissent in the next coming year.
Farman, you spoke about the party for disclosure. Let's also mention the fact that you're a working committee member of the SJB as well. So let me pose a question to you relating to that. Do you think that this bill in question is being brought in order to target an election in the future?
Yes, for sure, because if you look at the composition of the commission, it's appointed by the president, 5 members, so it's an extension of the executive. And then it goes on. I was just going through the act. If you go and look at 11C, it talks about directives, and then a directive to remove certain publications. And then if you go on to section 25, it talks about if you don't do that within 24 hours, it's an offence on its own. So who decides? This the commission decides once again. We are taking out the whole court process and just give the commission the power to say that, look here, I mean, if you have said something, if you on the show, if you say something which is prohibited under sections 12 to 24, which is like wide interpretation, huge wide interpretation. I mean, if we go one by one, I don't think we have time to go one by one from 12 to 24 on this show. These are all civil matters, can be dealt with defamation, can be, I mean, even if you lie, even if you lie and it doesn't matter, I mean, you can be taken under these laws, and you will be 5 years in jail and ₹1 million, and you do it the second time, your offence is doubled. So this is definitely to stifle dissent. I don't think anywhere in the world, I googled and so I didn't say anywhere in the world this kind of online security bill. This is not online security bill, this is...
But this, many say that this is a carbon copy of the Singapore Act as well, with relating to the online safety.
Yeah, to be very frank, Singapore is not a democracy, no. When I said anywhere in the world, I was talking about a democracy, a proper democracy. So you're right when you say it's a carbon copy. But I haven't gone through the Singapore Act. But we have to compare ourselves apples with apples. I mean, we have to compare it with a democracy. Right. So this is a totally dictatorial bill targeted for next year's presidential election.
Thank you very much, President's Counsel Farman Qasim. I now move my attention towards Attorney at Law Nuwan Bopage. What are your thoughts on this particular bill in question and the position of your party?
Yeah, in fact, before going to the provisions of this act, the recent interview of Ranil Wickremesinghe with foreign media is a reflection of the real objective of this act. So throughout that discussion, actually he wanted to prevent that journalists from expressing their ideas, his ideas. So likewise, there is a sequence of incidents took place prior to this particular act. You know, they wanted to bring an act regarding the mass media, then anti-terrorism bill, then actually they wanted to bring that rehabilitation act. So when you consider about the sequence of these acts, it's very clear the ulterior motive behind is to curtail the freedom of expression of the people. Why he want to do that? So election is one thing. As far as the other actions that have taken by the government, it's very clear IMF reforms are now, they are gradually implementing. When they implementing IMF reforms, it's very clear that you have to curtail the rights of the people. Like now, you know, the recent bill was passed regarding the EPF. At the same time, now the taxation and other reforms are concerned. They forecast ultimately people will come to streets and people will fight and they are raise their voice against this existing government. So having forecasting that only, they are bringing this act like they did in 1979 when they were J.R. Jayawardena, the uncle of Ranil Wickremesinghe, when he was bringing Prevention of Terrorism Act. Actually, he anticipated after implementing neoliberal economy, there will be people's uprisings. Therefore, to curtail these things, they wanted some weapon. So they used this Prevention of Terrorism Act like that. Going further, now this particular online safety bill, and at the same time they gazetted anti-terrorism bill. When you go through the provision one by one, number one, they want to repress the masses who are fighting against the government, who are raising their voice against the government. At the same time, we know the social media platform is very strong. So there is a good platform people to express their ideas freely. So the very objective of bringing online safety bill act, it's very clear that they wanted to resist people from expressing their ideas. So we can go one by one. Throughout this act, they use two words. Number one, false statement and prohibited statement. From section 12 to 24, they wanted to define what are the prohibited statements. We can go one by one, having taken into consideration all these provisions. When we take holistic idea of this act, you cannot express anything by social media or other platforms. This particular commission, which is going to be appointed by the president, can interpret whatever idea that we express in our social media as a prohibited or false statement. Yeah, so that is the objective of this.
So Nuwan, today issuing a statement, the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka says proceeding with such legislation without such institutional reform will jeopardize the freedom of speech and expression and related fundamental rights of the people of Sri Lanka.
Yes.
Do you think in any way that this is true?
Exactly. Not only that, I have that letter issued by Justice Dehideniya. So they have given, there are around 7 comments from the Human Rights Commission. So if we go one by one, the Human Rights Commission also came to a conclusion that this online safety bill is a grave violation of fundamental rights of the people, especially the freedom of expression. So this is how actually we appreciate this Human Rights Commission's letter. But I wonder whether now this President Ranil Wickremesinghe now as I remember March this year openly criticized the Human Rights Commission inside the parliament, and he mentioned certain names of the political parties, and he mentioned the name of the president of the bar association. So now that president only bringing this online safety bill and anti-terrorism bill. So it is now what we can say now his conduct, his throughout way that he expressed their idea reflect the content of this act. So I actually he might make another comment regarding Human Rights Commission on the next parliament. That is his nature. But they have actually discharged their duties by commenting on this. So actually we have to take into consideration these recommendations of the Human Rights Commission.
But you spoke about the interview that President Ranil Wickremesinghe gave DWTV in Germany, and it's very clear from the statement that the president made there that he was completely rejecting the UN Human Rights Commission's report that was tabled in Geneva recently as well.
The only thing is in 2017, during the Yahapanle government, he is the one who sent his foreign minister to human rights sessions and agreed.
And co-chaired.
Exactly. Co-chaired. At the same time, he agreed not to make use of the provisions of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. The same person, after 4 years down the line, now bringing a more worse act regarding the terrorism. So that is his conduct.
Thank you very much, Attorney at Law Nuwan Bopage. I wish, Niresh, in hindsight, that I was the one who was interviewing President Ranil Wickremesinghe, so I could have asked him more tough questions relating to Sri Lanka's human rights track record and his conduct as well.
We should invite him on the show.
Definitely, very soon. I now move my attention towards Attorney at Law James Vijayavannara.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me today. Let me begin reiterating the fact that the current parliament and current government lacks legitimacy to introduce any new piece of law. That is the stance I have been throughout reiterating in these forums as well as other forums, because this parliament majority cannot be considered as people-friendly or democratic parliament, because democratically people has rejected the parliament and ministers of cabinet and the prime minister, and then after rejection they got together and appointed president, though black letter law of the constitution provide for that. So this parliament lacks legitimacy to introduce not only the online safety bill, any other bill as well. Having said that, may I come to this? This is very seriously, this violates the fundamental right enshrined in the constitution. Now, according to our constitution, Article 118 of the constitution says exclusive jurisdiction with regard to fundamental right rests with the Supreme Court. Article 17 read with 126 provide, that is one of the major and democratic feature of the 1978 constitution, that people can go invoke the jurisdiction of Supreme Court in respect of violation of fundamental rights. Now, once this bill, if it is passed, I hope at some juncture, if this is withdrawn, I welcome that. But now since it is stable and we have to challenge before the Supreme Court, if this is passed, what will happen? It says false statement. All sections, 12 to 23 say what is the offense is. Conduct is a false statement. Statement include speech or expression. Speech or expression. Expression include writing a book, poem, demonstrating anything, wearing certain garments, or communicating certain message in whichever means from you to some other persons or the society at large. So it says false statement, all sections uniformly. That means expression has been declared by this bill as an offense, punishable offense. If you take our penal law, penal code, in any elements of the penal offence is two things. One is physical conduct, second is mental conduct of the wrongdoer. Mens rea and actus we say. There is no provision in the penal code except for giving false evidence that has a separate section. Other than that, expression per se is not an offence under our penal code or any other penal laws. But this act attempt to introduce all expressions, if it is false, according to the executive commission appointed by the president, if they are of the opinion if it is false, then that's amount to a crime. That's amount to crime. Then, if you look at section 28 subsection 3, if this type of FIR, if commission or some aggrieved party complain to the commission or the magistrate court, magistrate can decide whether that statement is false or not wrong, or whether it is exercise of fundamental right to criticize or legitimate dissent. Then magistrate will decide whether it's a fundamental right or not, or an offence. Then jurisdiction vests with the apex court of the country, Supreme Court, indirectly transferred to a magistrate in certain instances, and also indirectly transferred to executive branch, a commission which is appointed by the president, not even by the Constitutional Council. Therefore, it is very serious. Entire fundamental right jurisdiction vests with the Supreme Court in respect of freedom of expression and speech will be diluted to lower courts or to a commission. That is very dangerous. And again, as my friend Paraman said, we need certain laws to protect women and children. Already there are provisions in the penal code to deal with child abuse as well as impersonation, cheating. Now in this bill, there are separate sections. Cheating is an offence which is already there in the penal code. Impersonation is an offence which is already there in the penal code. Child abuse and certain sections form a part of this bill which is already there in the penal code. If you are genuinely intended to safeguard, as Paraman and myself agrees, the rights of children, prevent the abuse of children and women, you should have introduced amendments to the penal code and the law of evidence to adopt this type of evidence in criminal proceedings where accused are charged under the penal code. To introduce this type of action and create a statement per se itself, expression or speech itself, an offence is not warranted by any means. It is not rational. And if you consider the genuine objective, if for example in many countries, UK or Singapore, yes, there are certain protections has to be introduced to safeguard children and women. If that was the intention, we should have reformed our law pertaining to child abuse in the penal code, and also to admit compute evidence. Certain laws are there already.
Mr. Vijayabanda, just to get some clarity on this,
yes.
What is the position of the party relating to this bill?
Yes, firstly, this parliament lacks legitimacy. Therefore, we condemn all laws that may pass by this parliament because they are not people friendly. That is first place. And secondly, we will challenge this bill.
That's the position of the NPP.
Yes. We will challenge this bill, and we will go on public also, not only awareness program, and we are planning to distribute some leaflet to disseminate information to the public as well.
It's nice to see, Mr. Vijayabanda, after months of heated debates between your members against the SJB, at least now you all are seeing eye to eye in a matter like this as far as the country is concerned.
This is democratic country. We all are working for democracy.
Because you
so
said my friend Farman, that's what I thought.
So
we were friends.
That is the essence of a democracy, yes. Swami. We will agree to disagree on policy matters where it harms the country. We come down to one line, but when we have obviously we have ideological differences. So otherwise
that will remain as it is, no?
Yeah. Otherwise the democracy won't rise.
Look of it. It's like the NPP and the SJP have now united together, but that's not the case. No, it's only on this.
No, it's never the case. Our ideologies are totally different, and that's why the democracy will thrive. If ideologies are the same, there won't be a democracy, and then you'll be all mundane, going on the same direction every day. So
thank you very much, Farman, for that interjection as well.
Shamir, if these two parties ever do get together on the same platform, we can take the credit for the first step. Yeah.
But I now move my attention towards Shahrani, Executive Director for the Center for Investigative Reporting.
Thank you, Shamir. First of all, I would like to remind where we are now. We are in a post-Aragala era. If you analyze the Aragala era, people express themselves. There was a platform through online for people to express. Right? Even it's available now. Now, suppose if they didn't have something like that, we wouldn't have seen an Aragala. So I don't know whether that's the objective of this bill. But since all three experts have, spoken about the legal aspects, let me talk about how this is going to have an impact on the common man and the media as journalists, right? So if you analyze this bill, it lacks transparency, right? It's not definite on certain terms. For instance, like harmful content and disinformation, right? So who is going to decide it's harmful for whom, right? And then disinformation, who is going to decide it's a disinformation, right? I mean, the commission is appointed by the president. It's not independent. So there you have always room to manipulate things, right? And I think Farman also told, like, it creates a possibility to suppress the dissent, right? So from the common man side and also from a journalist point of view, now this creates a doubt, okay, whether I can report it or not, whether I can write this on my Facebook, whether I can write, express something against the government or against somebody, whom I don't like their policies, whether I can, express something against them in my Twitter. It creates a doubt, right? So basically, it's a threat to freedom of expression, right? If you also analyze, there is an issue with the data privacy in this, according to the bill. Now, whether we can, I mean, there is a clause where it says you have to retain your data, right? So in case if somebody wants to go through your data, they can go through, and it gives room for you being surveillanced, right, by the authorities, right? So your freedom, your liberty, your freedom of expression, all are curtailed as per the current bill, right? We don't know whether they will amend it, but as per the current bill, it's there. And it lacks independent oversight, right? So I have been always telling, like, the bills are okay as far as you have independent oversight, right? Now here, it's not there, appointed by the president, so we don't know who is going to be in that commission, and they can interpret the way they want to, and also they can basically go behind anybody who is going against the government or the president or anybody in the power. So these are some of the concerns from the sides of the media, journalists, and the public we have to address.
So, Shehar, when you look at the bill in totality and look at the recommendations and the suggestions that are made by the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, they speak about 27 out of the 59 clauses that need to be changed and re-looked at. So that means this bill will only go through with approximately around 25 clauses. All the other 28 have to be removed.
So I don't know whether what you said was true. I mean, the cut and paste, but it seems like they have not basically have consensus when drafting the bill, right?
At least it seems like no stakeholder consultation has even happened prior to bringing forth a bill like this sort.
That's right. I mean, we never saw a white paper. We never saw any consultation, any discussion taking place. So we knew only when it came, and when we went through only we saw these shortcomings were there.
Yeah, because most often than not, when a bill is brought in, this is part of a legislation in the country. At least this has to be discussed for a few months. And most often than not, many legislative reforms have been discussed in Sri Lanka for over 4 years before being enacted into law. This, absolutely nothing. Why is that?
That's why it creates doubt.
Right. Thank you very much, Shiarani is Executive Director, Center for Investigative Reporting. I now move my attention towards the man on to my immediate left, Niresh Lethambi, Consultant English News Director at Newsfirst. Niresh, the ball is in your court, literally. You can start posing the questions from the panelists.
Well, Shamir, I'm going to break with tradition and ask you a question. Now, we see a lot of silly bills coming through. That's why we take them up here. This is not exactly a legal show. If a bill or a law is perfectly fine, we don't even look at it, right? But when it is something which affects the public adversely, then we take it up because it's of interest to our audience. Now, Shamir, would you say that a bill which where 27 of the 55 clauses are violating the Constitution, would you say this is the stupidest, most ill-conceived bill that we have seen on this show?
So far, yes, unfortunately.
Yes. So, and we are paying for this, aren't we? Yes. Unfortunately. So I wonder whether this was done at the Ministry of Justice or maybe the Dehiwala Zoo. Either way.
But we can't find an architect yet on this bill. Just like the fact that we couldn't find an architect on the anti-terrorism bill.
That is one
and
of
the
media.
And for the 20th Amendment.
Exactly.
20th Amendment as well. You don't find, there is no architect.
There is no mother, there is no father, there is no child.
We are going to introduce to disclose the advisors to the public. We are in preparation of third amendment to the Constitution. Because they are intellectuals, they are accountable, they cannot hide behind the door and get the politician to go and do, making a muppet. But they are the people, intellectual, who must use their brain and serve the purpose. There is accountability on their part. When they introduce it, they have to say yes or no, freely, without being any interference from the political leadership for personal gain. So if everybody who draft this piece of law and throw it to the parliament or the president and they talk, they vote, but they are hiding behind the door.
No, but don't you think at the end of the day, Mr. Vijay Bandara, the onus lies in the cabinet of ministers headed by the president who gives the nod
precisely, yes.
To place this in the order paper to be discussed in parliament.
But what about when you are the public educants, you are educated from the system, and then if you become intellectual lawyer or doctor, whatever, in your particular area, this area also belongs to lawyers and the social activities and the media, then they have a duty. I mean, can you draft this? If I am asked to draft this type of law, if I am advisor, I'm going to say no, I can't. It is not the area that I have learned.
Yeah.
Well, whoever drafted this clearly has not read the Constitution even once. So, now let me ask Nuan. Freedom of expression is not just a right, it's a requirement in society, especially in democracies, where you need to allow people to blow off steam, to criticize, to figuratively shout online. Otherwise, they tend to bottle it up inside. This is a psychological phenomena, of course. So when a bill like this comes in, and if it becomes law, and people are afraid to go online and make their views known, isn't the government then driving dissent underground, which is a very dangerous thing, because then that leads almost automatically to extremism?
Yeah, exactly. Now, freedom of expression is concerned, actually it was a right which conquered by the society after having a lot of sacrifices. From the history of the world, it's very clear, from Magna Carta to the American Declaration, French Declaration. For all these declarations are concerned, the people fought throughout the history for their right, especially regarding freedom of expression. So now it has come to part of our constitution as a result of these uprising of our previous generations. So now can one person or group of people curtail that right? Now, you know, I think we might discuss regarding the anti-terrorism bill as well. The section 10 and 11 of the anti-terrorism bill that they brought to once again curtail the rights of freedom of expression. At the same time, section 3 of the anti-terrorism bill says if somebody is fighting against the government and another government or any international organization, that per se can be interpreted as a terrorist act. Now this same online safety bill they gazetted simultaneously, especially targeting the social media activists. Now for example, I just say the section 12 of the online safety bill. It says, even the Human Rights Commission also gave their recommendation, if there is a statement that threat to a national security, public health or public order or promote feelings of ill will and hostility between the different classes of people. That's what it says. Now, who's going to interpret this, whether it's a threat to the public security?
How can you define it?
Exactly. Now, for instance, if I am making some sort of statement regarding Easter attack, so that is my right. So there is a recent documentation by Channel 4. Now there was a whistleblower. That whistleblower saying that now this is what happened, the series of incident that he is explaining. Now let's assume prior to the Easter attack, if he had come to the media and make this statement, as a result of that there won't be a Easter attack because he divulged certain names. So then if there's no Easter attack, that statement he gave to the media would be considered as a false statement, because after that statement there won't be a Easter attack. Now then this commission can define it's a false statement within the meaning of section 12 and then gave direction to punish him. Now what is the rationale behind that? What is the rationale behind that? Even the Human Rights Commission very clearly gave their recommendation now how to interpret this distressing statement. Now if I might tell truth, but that statement might be distressing another person. So that is, because of that, can I be penalized? Can I be penalized?
Yeah, so we discussed this last week on the show as well. Rohan Datukoral, who was representing the business community at this panel last week, said that even for foreigners who come to Sri Lanka and visit a place and then puts a Facebook post with regard to something that he finds not right, he too can be arrested under this clause and put behind bars for 5 years. Then how are we as a nation promoting tourism at the end of the day? Because right now the need of the hour is to bring in tourists to the country and increase the foreign exchange as well. So such regulations will definitely stop foreigners even coming to Sri Lanka and posting good or bad things about the country.
In fact, now we all are using social media platforms. Now there is a self-regulatory system inside this social media system, because if I am making false statement throughout, that credibility is going down. As a result of that, there is a self-regulatory system. Now I'll once again go to proposed section 14. It says any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, as you said, who maliciously or warrantedly by communicating a false statement gives a provocation of any person intending or knowing it like to have a such provocation will cause the offence in rioting or committed. It's going further. Now this directly target, actually when we carefully consider the 2022 people's uprising, youth and people mobilize others through using the social media platform. They express their ideas against the government. Actually, it has started as a hashtag, go home. Now, if we want to say Ranil go to hell as a hashtag, after that, I can't, after passing this act, I can't do that, because that per se, they can interpret as a that provoke the people, and therefore, in terms of Section 14, the Commission can impose certain punishment.
Yeah, so just to give some clarity, I presume you are a lawyer, and the three of you are lawyers. Shihar is a well-renowned journalist as well. You will have to take full responsibility to the statements that you are making, and we as a network would take responsibility for the statements that Niresh and I are making. So I just want to first of all clarify that that stands as it is on every show. Just want to remind you about that.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
well.
Because now, why
is that going to work once this
I don't know,
comes in?
but at least for now,
I hope it's not retrospective.
Now remember, Shamir, that a very large portion of our audience is watching online, because we stream on a lot of platforms. So it's not just on air, it's online. So if one of the commissioners, the 5 commissioners, doesn't like what one of these gentlemen says, our whole show might get shut down very quickly.
Luckily, now these bills have not been passed yet. So I have little room to make these ideas, and at least I am using that that little room now.
Right.
So of course, as you correctly said.
Yeah. So I'll come back to you, Nuwan, shortly. Farman, I want to drag your attention to Section 19, which was spoken about, which Nuwan all spoke about a short while ago. Any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who by means of an online account pretends to be some other person, knowingly substitutes one person for another, or represents that such person or any other person is a person other than the person really is. Now, how can you find this out? Now, someone who is in Serbia or Yugoslavia or somewhere else, I don't know, anywhere in the world, opens a fake account. How is the Sri Lankan government going to take action against these persons?
Your guess is good as by Hamir. I think this is I think the most affected, we said, whom we want to protect is the women and children, but the most affected by this bill, if it becomes law, will be you guys. It's not the political parties, like we said, it's targeted election, all right, but it's the 4th estate that's going to be targeted, because anything that you report, anything that you write about, or anything on this show will be taken out against you. So I think the public, the publishing houses are the actual target of this whole bill, because any statement, like now the statement that you made, that is a cut and paste from the Singapore law, because there is the Sri Lankan name, it's a false statement, because it doesn't say Singapore, no? That's a false statement that you made to the letter of the law. So we can just take you in for 5 years for that if you don't retract.
Yeah, but
so it's simple things like that.
Yeah, but
I'm just not that it will happen.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to emphasize is that this bill is so harsh that we are going back, like I don't know how many years, probably going back to the king's time or where, that anyone, the commissioners, can tell you to retract, and if you don't within 24 hours remove something, you're liable for
what I'm trying to fathom is the fact that, Farman, we have a lot of independent commissions in Sri Lanka, and let's take a look at the Human Rights Commission for an example. They don't have teeth to do any action after they find someone guilty. However, this commission, look at the powers under Section 25. Any person who fails to comply with any directive issued in respect of such person by the Commission under paragraph C of Section 11 within 24 hours of its receipt commits an offence and shall be on conviction be liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years.
So that's why I reiterate that I told you earlier also that you take out the court process and give this commission and the right that you say you're convicted on its own right, on its own motion, you're convicted, you're found guilty by the commission.
And the danger is this commission is appointed by the president.
By the
and
president.
he has the will to remove any person at his discretion anytime he wants. And appoint anyone under his discretion as well.
No, we've all been through this document, and I'm a little confused. How are the commissioners to be removed? Farman, could I address that to you?
At the will of the president.
At the will of the president.
Because
So Parliament has nothing to do with it.
because the appointing authority is the president.
Exactly.
And he can remove.
So going by that, the removing authority also will be the president according to the interpretation audience. So
So you could have an accused murderer as a commissioner, and that's perfectly fine.
No.
there are certain disqualifications.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Thankfully, this bill has not
Who
become
can
law.
get into the
Yeah.
commission and then can be murdered.
Thankfully, I am there. You're immediate right.
You can first get into
There are
So
certain specifications.
there are certain specifications. However, it says very clearly under Section 7, the president may, for reasons assigned, remove a member of the commission from his office. So it's under the president's directive.
And remember, president is immune from court cannot question
Yes.
president's discretion. So
The frightening part here is Section 25. Where on something happen on an event taking place, the court process is sent out, and you are 5 years in jail. You do it again 10 years, double it. I mean, where in the world where in a decent democracy or where rule of law applies, where do you take out the court process and give 5 commissioners the right to say you're guilty of something? And who interprets this? It's the commissioner's interpretation.
And why is it, Mr. Vijay Bandara, the contempt of court aspects have been mentioned in this bill in question?
That is, I was to address that issue. Before that, mentioned that about sister radio, there is a famous program called Tarzan. The Tarzan also in person. They can say he is not appearing as if what is by his name, pretending to be a different person, Tarzan. He also can be dealt if this bill becomes law. That's
the danger. That's the danger.
If commission say this Tarzan is doing something and he is not the person, his name is different, he also can be dealt. See how dangerous. Then let me come back to your question. Now contempt of court is clearly laid down in the Constitution as well as Civil Procedure Code as well as Criminal Procedure Code. There are 2 categories of contempt. One is contempt committed in-house of the court, in the presence of the judge. Those are dealt by respective courts. And other thing is contempt of court commits outside the court. All this communication and online expression falls under the category 2. Contempt commits outside the court. At the moment, Article 105, subsection 3 of the Constitution says contempt committed outside court has to be dealt either by Supreme Court or Court of Appeal, not otherwise. Here, they have even diminished the value of the contempt of court. Section 13 of the Act, which deals with the contempt court, I believe, this is 13. It says, the contempt of court is which section? It's 13.
It's
Contempt is 13, yeah. 13.
Yes, 13.
So it says if it is a false statement, jurisdiction rests with the magistrate court. This act says magistrate court or the commission appointed by the president. Even Court of Appeal power with regard to contempt of court has been diluted by the provisions of this act. This will be considered by Supreme Court when the bills are challenged. So on that I can predict this bill will not be approved by the Supreme Court.
The bill will not be approved
In
by
the
Supreme
present
Court. Has the NPP gone to courts on
Yes,
this?
we will be filing a petition tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
Yes.
okay. Shehar, you said something very alarming. You said that this is going to affect the ordinary journalists, individuals like you and I at the end of the day. How grave is it?
So if you want to
Give us an example so
Yeah.
we can illustrate it better to the public.
Yeah. So if you want to write a story about corruption, right, and say there's a person in the government involved, and when you write it, and with all the quotes and background, simply that person can if they are close to this commission or commissioners, basically the commission can come behind you and say this is wrong, this is a disinformation, right? And in journalism, basically you go with certain anonymous sources, right? You go with people's statement, right? Now sometimes we verify, mostly we verify, sometimes we go with what they say because they have the authority to say. Now this bill will make you think twice or thrice whether you should do the same, right? Whether you can do that story, whether you can write it, whether you can express somebody's opinion, because it might be harmful or it might be considered as disinformation by this commission. So you will have that second thought always, right? It's not going to be an independent journalism we are going to do. It's not going to be free.
It's going to be a self-imposed censorship.
Exactly.
That we experienced in Sri Lanka between 2005 2010
That's
in
right.
particular.
Yeah. So during that time we had this censorship, and you have to send your reports to some authority and then get approved. So I don't know whether this commission will become that kind of an approving body.
And many print media institutions had to face this dilemma during that time.
Exactly.
They had
Exactly.
to vet their copies through an authority that was
That's right.
that was established not officially but
Yeah.
unofficially.
That's right.
So just to go a little further on that, Shihar. So corruption in most cases is carried out by high public officials, and of course even at the lowest levels. But we are more interested in the large sums by corporation directors and so on. Now those persons who are appointed to such posts are usually from the president's party or close associates in some way. Usually presidents and ministers don't just appoint anyone off the street to be on the board of directors of a corporation. And of course these 5 commissioners would also be in that same circle of friends, wouldn't they? So you basically have a group of associates or friends, some of whom are committing the crimes of corruption, and they are friends on the commission who would be in a position to protect them. So this sounds quite a disaster where corruption is concerned. Would you agree?
Well, Niresh, historically we have not seen a president or a person in the power appointing somebody against them. So yeah, in that sense, that might get repeated.
You brought a very pertinent point there. I think, like you said, it is natural that you appoint people in your circle. That naturally happens. That is by giving authority to this bunch of power and authority to persons appointed by the president on his own motion to a position like this, and where they are given so much of powers. I think we are going into a totally dictatorial lockdown kind of situation where 5 of these persons who are definitely close to the president, appointed by the president, will be basically telling you what you can say, what you can't say, and if you step out of line of what you can't say, you will be convicted summarily convicted out of the court system. So this has huge impact on the whole of the country. More so, again, I reiterate, it's on the publishing houses. I mean, the media will be totally gagged. No doubt about it. That is what it's coming in for. And if there is this theory that they are trying to espouse this because of the women and children. But if it was so, they could have just concentrated on that and given the power to the magistrate to decide.
So People's Advocate Farman, let's say in the government's defense, the government says that there needs to be laws of this sort to protect women and children, as you mentioned. Do we have adequate laws right now in Sri Lanka to protect the rights of children and women?
I will differ with my good friend Vijayabanda that we might not have adequate laws because of the speed. But if we can have this law only for that purpose, and these matters were dealt with for women and children in this act, but not by the commission again. If the commissioners or the commission can only facilitate the process, they can have a court. Now, in other countries like Hong Kong, the Admiralty Court sits 24/7. You can have a magistrate. If we can produce, if we in Sri Lanka we still produce drunk driving suspects and magistrates in their houses and grant bail. So if we can do that, why can't we have a magistrate sitting 24/7 and the commission go immediately and stop publication of nude pictures of children, no women, no whatever it is. So there are ways and means. If you want to do something, if you have the will and you have the acumen and the intellect, you can do it. It's not big magic to do these things, but you have the correct intentions. Here the intention is wrong. The intention is totally warped. The only intention is to suppress dissent.
But why do you think that the government is bringing such legislation very quickly? We've seen the Ranil Wickremesinghe administration between 2002 and 2005. I think, Farman, you also would have been actively involved during this period where the UNP-led government was taking center stage between 2002 and 2005. But why now? What is the mighty hurry President Ranil Wickremesinghe is having to bring in these laws?
So now you're putting me in a very embarrassed situation, getting into his shoes now. So if I was thinking like him, he's 75. This is his last run, right? So he needs to get re-elected in next year, where he's turning 75 next year, his last run. So he's trying his best, you know. If I was him, I wouldn't do it. But I said if I was thinking like him, this would be to put public dissent, totally get public dissent, act like, you know, he.
But if you do things like that, the public will vote you out. Now look at the cost of living in the country. Look at the way in which the health sector in Sri Lanka has collapsed. There is a crisis taking place, and this bill again speaks about the public health sector as well. So why would you do something like that? Why would you get yourself shot in your own toes?
Good question again, Sami, because when you get into the chair of president, the executive presidency, I think everybody goes a bit cuckoo. It has happened to almost every president that sat on the chair. You start thinking differently. So his thought process is, I'm 75, I'll give it my best shot.
If Sajid Premadasa is appointed president, he would act the same.
I said all who have got into the position. I didn't say who are going to get into the position. I said all who got into the position. Sajid Premadasa.
You said that everyone who gets into that
who got into that position.
Not those who will get into.
Not to get in.
So let's say if Anukumar Disanayak or someone else is appointed, that's a different story.
Sorry, once again?
If Anukumar Disanayak or someone else gets appointed, then it's a different story.
I can't speak for Anukumar Disanayak because I don't know him that well. I haven't even had a decent conversation. But I know that Sajid Premadasa, if he gets into that, of course, he's not going to behave like this. That's for sure. Going by the way he conducts himself in the party and the working committee. I've been privy to what happened in the working, not that I was a part of the working committee in the UMP, but I've been privy to how it happens in the UMP and the SJB, so it's totally different. So what I was trying to say, Shamir, is that's his thought process. He's 75. This is his last run. So try to stop dissent as much as possible and attempt to, see what happens at the election, hoping for the best.
So Vijayabanda, if you look at it, Sri Lanka has a good national center for cyber security. We've seen the manner in which how they have taken actions very swiftly against online bullying and all that. Do you think that we don't have adequate laws? Is that why the government is bringing all these laws into the table?
We do have. Even at the moment, it's most of the contempt of court law we have. Even recently passed another act, contempt of courts and institutions. So that has been dealt very recently. And also penal code provisions are in verbatim they have mentioned here. And if there is anything lacking, to adopt online communication as a piece of evidence in respect of child abuse or impersonation or cheating, that has to be introduced by amending law of evidence or computer evidence laws. Those laws are there. Electronic Transaction Act, there is Act. So there is no need to ensure existing penal law pertaining to protection of child and women has to be addressed by separate act called online safety. There is no necessity at all. And other danger is, now Nuresh refers to corruption, look at section 22.
Because last week we had Ambika Satyalanathan on the show and she said that this should not be worded as online safety, this should be worded as internet stoppage. You know, it's just absolutely a hideous bill in the eyes of it.
And most of the things are impossible to implement. All what they can do is harass Sri Lankan media only. They have no jurisdiction to go into other countries.
No, but what I don't understand is you have countries like the UK, the US, where there is self-imposed regulations for social media like Facebook. Yeah. We saw on the 21st of April 2021 when the Easter Sunday bombings took place, when there was so much of hatred, racism that was spreading. There was complete outage of Facebook in the country as well. Yes. So don't you think what is important right now in Sri Lanka is to have these organizations like Meta or CERT or whatever it is, to ensure that they have a self-imposed regulations to address these issues?
Yes, I do agree with you. Now here, they say 22 says private information. Now President Ranil Wickremesinghe himself, when he was the Prime Minister, he is the one appointed a commission headed by former senior lawyer Mr. R.K.W. Gunasekara, and they recommended to remove the criminal defamation laws from Sri Lankan Penal Code. That is after that in famous Singharatnatunga's defamation case, he was convicted for defaming then President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartuma. Thereby it was removed. Now this section 22 indirectly reintroduced criminal defamation because this is a penal section. And also, very important, Nuresh, as you refer to corruption, this says disclosing private information is an offense. And there is an exception here, but if this does not include any information that may be evidence of the commission of any other offense. That means even if information belongs to private individual, if it is something to do with any other offense under the penal code, that information can be disclosed. It is not an offense. That is only in respect of private data. But when it comes disclosing public information, corruption, public institution conduct, there is no that such expression. Even to disclose a crime, you are prevented from disclosing that. That per se is discriminatory. They have given protection to, they have enlarged. The people can disclose facts, media can disclose, disseminate facts if it's related to commission of an offense, not under this piece of law, under any other law. But if you disclose any departmental data like, hacking the medicine database or something, so then you can be caught up, even if you disclose which is connected to commission of an offense. Now, corruption and bribery is an offense. So you are prevented from disclosing those data. That is the meaning of section 22 of this bill.
So, Shihar, let me bring you back to the medical crisis that Shamir mentioned. Now, this of course has several facets, including the shortage of medicines and some patients apparently and unfortunately passing away due to some medicines being given. Now, when the media first reported this, the government authorities concerned came out and denied it completely. But of course later on, with the GMOA and other organizations also joining in, it became proven. So what happens when the media gets to know that a batch of medicines in a particular hospital is causing issues to some patients, and it's in the public interest to raise the alarm and say don't take this medicine, this bet should be removed. But of course, government works very, very slowly. It takes weeks for them to do that, and media pressure is required. Now, how would you report that at all? Because you're going to get taken down for reporting something which the health ministry will say
False.
is not true.
So there, I think you will need solid evidence, something like a consultant coming out and saying that.
But health regulation,
Yeah.
the AR and FR prevents,
Exactly.
prevents
That's why I'm
government
saying.
servants from coming out and saying
So
anything.
without the approval from the secretary, ministry secretary, they can't speak to the media.
But it's the ministry secretary who's denying it.
Right. so this is the dilemma here. I think this is the dilemma, right? We will know things, but we won't be able to report things, right? And in the public domain, we will not be able to share many things, right? Like what we have done in the past, right? Exposing corruption, exposing wastages, exposing, how these people conduct day-to-day business in the government institutions. We will have to wait and see how we are going to do that, with the commission and with, the new act. If this being passed as it is, we don't know. We are going into unknown territory.
So, Shehar, Section 16 of the bill says, any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who with deliberate intention of wounding the religious feelings of any other person, communicates a false statement to the target person, commits an offence, and shall be, on conviction, be liable to imprisonment of either description for a term not exceeding 2 years, or to a fine, or to both such imprisonment and fine. How does the commission define? How does the commission define that it was deliberate or not?
No idea. I mean, this is why I'm saying, like, it's not defined properly, right? Now, a bill should give a totality on the proposed act. Like, this is how we are going to do. Now, this is so gray, where they don't define, okay, this is how we are going to do this. This is how the mechanism is. This is what a hate speech is. This is what a disinformation is, right? Now, without defining that, we can't say anything unless and until these commissioners come and say, okay, this is what it is. And we also have to learn by seeing what's going to happen. It's kind of a on the work training, on the job training.
Yeah. So Farman, looking at Section 21 of the bill, I'm reading out these sections in totality because I want the people who are watching the show to understand what we're discussing, or else I can just mention Section 21. But Section 21 of the bill says, any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who communicates any false statement, now this is not defined, with the intent to cause any officer, sailor, soldier, or airman in the Navy, Army or Air Force of Sri Lanka to mutiny, or with intent to cause fear or alarm to the public, induces any other person to commit an offence against the state or against the public tranquility, commits an offence. Now, Farman, does this mean, like the Killing Fields documentary that was released by Channel 4 in 2011, the recent Channel 4 documentary that was made public a couple of weeks ago, cannot do so?
So now if you look at this, Shami, now false statement is defined. Means a statement that is known or believed by its maker to be
very
incorrect,
broad.
very incorrect or untrue, and is made especially with the intent to deceive or mislead, but does not include caution and opinion or imputation good faith. So incorrect or untrue also is very, very broad. But public tranquility is not defined. So now how are we going to decide what public tranquility means? Public tranquility for you is different for me, tranquility.
Now,
So
Farman, also the truth changes.
Yes.
Today, the police spokesman may say this person committed suicide, but tomorrow the government analyst will come and say, no, he was poisoned. So then the truth actually changes.
It changes from time to time, from person to person. That is why we have diverse opinions. It talks about opinions also, but that's why we are basically giving this commission to play God. That's what we are giving. And if I may ask you, I mean, high up in the establishment, are the publishing houses also challenging this bill? Because I think the biggest target segment is the publishing houses and the media houses. I'm wondering whether the publishing house and media houses have discussed this issue to challenge the bill, because I think putting the onus on the political parties alone also is it's a good thing anyway. As a political party, we are going to challenge it. We have challenged it.
I think we're challenging it right here.
Whether the publishing house is also challenging in the Supreme Court.
And also you can't predict anything, as you rightly said. Prediction may find wrong or correct next day. Then even prediction per se amount to a crime if this law is passed in this form.
And also, Mr. Vijayavanar, now since there is no hearing at which the so-called accused gets to explain his or her side, you can't even rely on precedent. What I mean is, today the commission might have one viewpoint on how things should be done, and next week it could change its mind and do something completely different on the same type of case. And you're not there, your lawyers are not there, so it's topsy-turvy, isn't it? How does one know?
This is impracticable to implement. Therefore, this will not serve the apparent stakeholders. This will only serve some hidden agenda of the government, that is curtail opposing view during a time of national level elections, presidential or parliamentary election. That is only thing possible, because if say after being conviction, that means conviction by a competent court of law. That I have to say. That commission has not power to that. What the commission can do is, they can come to predetermination prior to court take a judgment with regard to whether a particular statement is false or wrong. Prior to that, commission can say, oh, we have formed an opinion, this is false statement. Therefore, we direct orders to sabotage transmission system, communication pattern, WhatsApp group, Facebook, Twitter, anything they can block. That is prior to the conviction. The commission always act prior to the conviction. That is more dangerous.
Yeah. So what I don't understand is, Nuwan, looking at section 48, where an offence under this act is committed by a body or person, then if that body of person is a body corporate, if every director or other principal officer of that body corporate, a firm, every part of that firm, and an incorporated body, every individual who is a controlling member of such a body, and every principal officer of that body responsible for its management and control commits an offence, provided, however, that no such person shall be deemed to have committed an offence if he proves that the offence was committed without his knowledge, or that he exercised all due diligence to prevent the commission of that offence. Now, what does this mean now? Someone makes an offence, he commits a crime, and then he comes and says, like what we saw in the past, where a lot of perpetrators went to courts and said, I can't remember, I don't know how it happened. Anyone can go up and say, this happened without our knowledge. I'm very sorry about it. I will take action not to repeat it. So they are excluded from this, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So as you correctly pointed out, they have been excluded. At the same time, now this section 48, actually ultimately all these sections must be read with the section 12 to section 24. Now I'll take an example like this now. Now for instance, now you pose a question. Now we must have a right to express an idea based on surmise or conjecture. It's very clear, because now there are certain circumstances, then we can analyze, then we can predict something out of that. For instance, now let's think about the bond scam. Now there are series of series of incidents. Now we can analyze all these things and come to a conclusion. Now this person is a one of the culprit because he is the one who appointed the governor and he is one who safeguard these people. Then I express an idea saying that according to these circumstances, he is liable to do that. But on the face of it, he has not been convicted from a court, and there are no concrete material to show that. But I have a right to come to that conclusion based on that surmise. So that you can't say it's not a truth. So that is my idea. So I should have right to express that idea. So in terms of this section 20 and 22, that has been prohibited as a prohibited statement. Then it connected to all these section 48 and all these, whether it's a body corporate, whether it's an individual. So you can, the commission can punish.
Yeah.
At the same time, you ask about the commission. The commission, in terms of section 11, the commission has been given powers like quasi-judicial powers. It means it acts as a court. So even now, when it acts as a court, at least there must be an independence. Now, president only appointing, that particular body has a quasi-judicial right. So that per se violates the basic norms of regarding the independence of judiciary and all those. But another thing, now, as you said, whether the existing laws are sufficient. Now I will go one by one. Now section, the clause 12 is identical to the, there's a clause in Official Secret Act. At the same time, clause 16, 17 and 20 are identical to the 291A and 290B of the Penal Code. Then going further, clause 15 is identical to the section 291. So likewise, even in the these anti-terrorism bill, most of the clauses are in the penal code. So why they need special law like this? Then as far as the other laws are concerned, because penal code and offensive weapons act, at the same time certain amendment was brought to the computer crimes act. So all these general laws govern most of these offences. Then only you have to think about why they are bringing this particular act. So then when you read all these sections together, ulterior motive is clear. Whether the definitions given by them and the interpretation given by them regarding the false statement, prohibited statement. So all these, the ulterior motive is basically they are targeting the social media activists. So my concern is all these provisions are governed by some other general laws. You need not to have these kind of special laws. If you really want laws, then you can amend Computer Crimes Act and Penal Code Act, and with these amendments you can strengthen the certain offences. So therefore, why they are very hurriedly begin this act. So now you know, as far as this government is concerned, this parliament is concerned, now they lost the people mandate. At the same time, there's no social contract. This president is concerned is only a substituted president. So in a situation like that, in a crisis like that, what they should bring, they have to actually how to minimize this burden of the people, how to minimize, how to bring concept like cooperative system, how to close the loopholes in the other like microfinance bill. So those are the debate that should brought to this parliament. But instead of that, what they are bringing most draconian laws ever in the history. So in that sense.
Farman, interestingly, what Nuwan and Vijay Bandara and Shihar inclining to say that this bill is not necessary for Sri Lanka. How do you view the role of parliamentarians? I know you are inclined towards the SJB, but don't you think if this bill passes through the Supreme Court, even the parliamentarians have a big responsibility to play and ensure that this bill should not go through?
Of course, this bill should not go through. That's a must. I mean, that there's no two words about it. But as you know, we are in a very funny situation today. We have a president who has been appointed by the SLPP government. They hold a certain number of seats in parliament, even though there is a breakaway segmentation. I believe strongly that most of these bills, the Supreme Court will will determine that you need 2/3 and a referendum to be passed. Most of the clauses will also say you need 2/3, which I don't think this parliament will any in favor of. There will be 2/3 in favor of passing a bill. But more importantly, I think we need to share this discourse with the general public and take this way forward, because this bill and the anti-terrorism bill, which was on the order paper but funnily not tabled. That's the new operation now. You put it on the order paper and not table it. So we are not sure whether this is now the time for determination is over or not. With the constitution says 14 days from the time you put it, the bill is on the order paper. So both these bills are on the order paper, but only the online security bill was tabled. So something very sinister is going on, and some modus operandi to get these bills passed. The 14 days from the order paper means it's not tabled, but whether we have after they table it, it's after 14 days if it's tabled,
right.
When we challenge it, they might the court even might say that it's past the 14 days in terms of the constitution.
Yeah.
So something very strange is happening.
Yeah.
We have to be vigilant. And I want to reiterate that the intentions of this bill are wrong. So many people should know that. I mean, we have espoused that because the intentions of this bill is totally warped. The only reason is to shut down dissent. Again and again I say, if we want to protect women and children, we can bring it in that bill and have a 24-hour court even.
Yeah.
Give it to the court.
So Shihar, now getting back into this interview that was telecast recently by DW TV in Germany. So if the president, based on this bill that is, if the president dislikes the person who interviewed, he says, you're talking nonsense at one instance, then he says, bunkum, you know. So based on this bill, section 12, any person whether in or outside Sri Lanka, so he is definitely culpable, who poses a threat to national security, public health and public order to promote feelings of ill will and hostility between different classes of people by communicating a false statement, commits an offence and shall be convicted for not less than 5 years. So poor journalist, he won't be able to ask questions anymore.
Well, it all depends on the interpretation of the commission, unfortunately, if this bill becomes the law, we all will have to live with the mercy of the commissioners or commission, unfortunately.
If the commissioner, someone does not like someone's face, that's it.
Most of the journalists, as I was saying, I mean, the journalists and the media houses are at peril.
I agree.
You have to shut down and go home because you won't be able to say
We
anything.
came to a conclusion that provision is so vague. So then, if it's vague, then
This is doing something by this is trial by error.
Yeah. And also you refer to 48, where an offence under this act committed a corporate body. I give the illustration. If your segment of your news telecast, say news at 7, if commission is of the opinion it is false, right? Then your directors has to go and say that I am not liable, I have acted due diligence, I read the news bulletin and all these.
I didn't know he was going to say this.
Yes.
Yeah.
But for that you have to go.
Remember.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Exactly,
Shamir, if this bill passes, then Face the Nation might have to go into some kind
Under
of
the table.
underground operation.
cover the face.
But
that also will be followed.
not allowed.
Oh, yes.
Impersonation
We
is not
can't
allowed.
impersonate
No,
anyone.
the other concern is now see, we do news, we write news based on the sources.
Yes.
Right? Now the sources will be scared to come out and speak to us because they will be targeted.
I think international norms are there. No, the journalists cannot be compelled to disclose the source of information. That is the law, right? Now this bill has totally.
And under a closed court, you can divulge.
Yes, but if it is a secret or something,
not
in
in
a
an
proceeding,
open court,
yes.
yeah.
Whereas the world is encouraging whistleblowers,
Yeah.
here we are even stopping the proper news channels, even proper sources from coming forward. I mean, this is absurd.
Now,
to say
say
the least.
Marisi Palo, certain cartoonists, they have use a different name. They don't use their exact name.
But now they have to disclose it if this comes.
Yes, you have to put your name.
Yeah, put your name.
With birth certificate and everything.
Birth certificate, I don't know.
In the world that it's a sacred right
to not to
For
disclose the source.
journalists to not to even write certain things using a different name. So
It's a norm. It's a norm.
exactly, it's a norm. So they are
That
using
happens
throughout.
everywhere. Washington Post, New York
Exactly.
Times.
It's an option and freedom for
Yes,
you, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So, and if you look at it, even the Sunday newspapers in Sri Lanka, most of them are reporting under as
yes.
Mr. Vijay Bandar said, under different names.
Yeah.
And that will also be stopped because of this. If you look at the Human Rights Commission report, as Niresh and I mentioned earlier, they want section 3, 5, 7, 11, 25, 26, 30, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 20, 19, 27, 22, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 39 and 48
So-
to be amended. So basically,
Toss-
right to the...
Do you have a waste paper basket around?
Unfortunately, no, Niresh. So directly to the waste paper basket or thrown out of the window. I want to ask the four of you, what is the way forward for a country like Sri Lanka? We all agree that there needs to be certain limitations when it comes to social media. Farman initially said that child and women protection is very important. But what is the way forward? So let's start off with Shihar. I'll give you 2 minutes each to wrap up and sum up on the topic today.
So I don't disagree that there is a necessity for online safety, measures. We have seen hate speech, we have seen disinformation, mainly during the post Easter attack. So we need some measures to curtail that. But it's not at the expense of the freedom of expression. Right? Now this bill directly curtail the freedom of expression. That's what we have to be vigilant. We have to challenge. We have to stand up as a voice, as a nation, and say no to this bill and those specific amendments. And it also creates doubt whether you can express something, whether you can write something, whether you can comment on something. So it directly deprives your freedom of expression and your liberty. So this is where we need to challenge this, and the way forward is we need online safety, but not at the expense of the freedom of expression. So we need to amend in such a way that people have the freedom of expression, but there is a self-regulation like in the other countries.
Shihar, just a very quick question, because you spoke about freedom of expression. Don't you think that on certain occasions people push the envelope a bit too much when it comes to freedom of expression? There is a fine line that needs to be observed when it comes to freedom of expression in any country.
Yes, but I think there are laws to deal with it. Or if there is no law, bring those new bills to deal with them, not as a blanket cover to deal with everything.
Thank you very much, Shihar. I now move my attention to Attorney at Law James Vijay Bandara.
Yeah, according to the universally recognized democratic system of governance, any democratically elected parliament or president between two elections can lose the legitimacy to be in power. In Sri Lanka, after the Aragalaya, the incumbent parliament, then president and ministers of cabinet and the prime minister lost the legitimacy. Thereafter, what was required was to have an election, allow people to elect a parliament. What the rejected majority members of the parliament did was electing, using the black letter law, electing Ranil Wickremesinghe as the president, whom had only one seat in the parliament. That created a total collapse of the system of governance. Therefore, until such time that we set in motion the proper system of governance, this parliament should not enact any laws. That is my position. That we have seen, if you take last 2.5 years, all the advisors or the ministers, they came in public, came to this table, say 20th amendment is good. Within 1.5 years, we'll pass another new constitution. Nothing will happen. After 1 year, they say, no, that is bad, now we go for 21st amendment. Nobody take the accountability or responsibility by expressing in public, this is good or bad. Next day say, no, yes, it is wrong. So nobody accountable to the society. Therefore, if I conclude saying this, somewhere in the 19th decade, there was an attempt to introduce the Broadcasting Authority Bill. That was reviewed by Supreme Court. And Supreme Court clearly held Article 4D of the Constitution says all three organs of government, that is the President, Parliament and the Judiciary, are bound to secure, promote and protect fundamental rights, not to curtail. Then Supreme Court said Article 4 read with Chapter 3, there are limitations introduced by the Constitution itself, Article 15.1 to 15.8. Parliament of Sri Lanka has no power or legitimacy to introduce or curtail limitation to the fundamental right beyond what is permitted by the Constitution from Article 15.1 to 15.8. Those restrictions are there. Therefore, beyond that, this Act tries to totally make it meaningless, the freedom of expression and other related rights. Therefore, this bill, with my limited knowledge of law, I am confident that Supreme Court will say this most of the sections are in totality contrary to the Constitution, and this cannot be passed without 2/3 plus a referendum.
Yeah, I now move attention towards Attorney Akal Nwangbopage.
Yeah, exactly. Now, our Constitution and the Human Rights Declaration guaranteed the freedom of expression and other fundamental rights. Whatever bill should be subjected to those rights. Now here, why we all are now exercising that our rights of freedom of expression. Now there must be already there is in society there is a self-regulatory system. So we have to enhance that. We have to uplift that self-regulatory system. So that is the fundamental thing that we need. Even in the social media, there is no such a crisis because within that system, people know how to regulate themselves. Within that system, people criticize each other. Within that system, people know how to avoid some sort of statements. So that regulatory system must be there. If the government if the executive is going to interfere with that, it will create serious issues. Now we know as to how they use Public Property Act, as to how they use Ragging Act, and as to how they use even the ICCPR Act. The ICCPR Act was brought to with very good intention, but the Section 3 of that Act was almost they used to suppress the people who are expressing their ideas. Likewise, even these kind of acts also they misuse. Then how can we expect they will not misuse, the executive will not execute this kind of draconian law. So we have that experience regarding the Prevention of Terrorism Act. As Mr. Farman says and senior counsel said, I disagree with that because throughout all the people who came to power pledged to abolish the PTA. But nobody did. Once they come to power, they are misusing this. That is the nature. Even though now they are protesting, they are making things against that. But once they come to power, they always use this provision. That's what this Ranil Wickremesinghe government doesn't understand. They won't be in the power forever. This particular port tour won't be in power forever. Once they go to the opposition, the other party will make use this against that. So that is what happened throughout the history. Therefore, democracy is the most paramount important thing. These people should understand. Whatever things happen against the democracy, we all get together and oppose that, because ultimately we all doing these things for the sake of the democracy. Therefore, let me to conclude this particular online safety bill is the complete bill is a draconian law. So we have to somehow defeat that, because otherwise this entire society have to pay a cost. Because as you said, if we are not expressing our idea, if the society is freeze, that of course prevent the society to move forward, and the entire society will be stagnant. Therefore, we have to stop that. We have to, at what cost, we have to protect the freedom of expression, and we have to defeat somehow by way of a street fight, by way of judicially before courthouse, we have somehow to make our best effort to defeat this particular bill.
Thank you very much, Nuwan. Last but not all the least, Farman Qasim, President's Counsel.
The question was, what's the way forward for Sri Lanka? What's the way forward is we have a rogue parliament and a stopgap president. So when you have a stopgap president, he should not be looking at re-election. No, he's not looking at looking at his future dreams, but as sorting out the problems of the country. Now, is this the biggest burning issue in the country today? Is online security and the ATA the biggest burning issues in the country today? And to be more, no. The largest burning problems in the country are the social problems that are there. So basically the way forward is, if you really want to do something good, you do something good in the social aspects of things. And also with regards to what Nuwan said, when we come into power and we forget everything, SJB is different because we are the ones who tabled the bill, a private member's bill. No other party in the history of after the executive presidency was enacted that tabled a bill, a private member's bill, to abolish the executive presidency. So SJB is the way forward. There's no doubt about it. And we are the most honest, most legitimate government in waiting. So I mean that proves a point that we are the alternative government in waiting and the next government to take over.
Very subjective.
No, very subjective. Obviously, everybody has an opinion. But what Nuwan said was, but I am going on. But Nuwan says, when we come to power, we forget everything. But
Nuwan never said that SJB was the government in waiting.
That's what I'm saying. No other government, no other opposition had even tabled this bill because they wanted to become the president. But whereas SJB, through its general secretary, by private members' bill, we had moved a bill to abolish the executive presidency. The way forward is for this particular government. Not the way forward is SJB, all right, in the next year, but this year for this government and this stopgap president is not to try to enact bills of this nature that stifles dissent and tries to help his re-election.
Farman, it was also stated that the anti-terrorism bill will also be tabled in Parliament yesterday, but we didn't
see the anti-terrorism bill is in the order paper. Both these bills are in the order paper, but the online security bill was tabled. So that's why we were discussing with Nuwan. Also, we have this problem now because the Constitution says within 14 days of a bill being placed on the order paper, you have to challenge it. So now we were discussing whether we need to challenge it or not, because after the 14 days expires, someone could turn around and say your 14 days has now passed and you can't challenge the bill. So as I said, something sinister is going on.
So in a real soup.
Yeah, something sinister is going on. But we are going to, I think we have decided to file papers to, irrespective of that, for determination, for make application for special determination, even though it has not been tabled.
Right. Farman Qasim, President's Counsel, thank you very much for joining us this evening on Face the Nation.
Thank you.
Attorney at Law Nuwan Bopake, Attorney at Law James Vijay Bandara, as well as Shihar Aniz, Executive Director for Centre for Investigative Reporting. Thank you very much, Niresh, for joining us this evening on Face the Nation. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do, but this time not relevant to the bill in question that we discussed, but in relevance to what happened recently on the media as far as President Ranil Wickremesinghe is concerned. Don't raise your voice. Always try to improve your argument. Take care and good night.
If we think about this history of development and how there is a certain attractiveness about it, so could you take us